The human delegation retreated to their assigned quarters in the east wing of the Crystal Palace. Marcus paced frantically across the polished floor that reflected his distressed expression back at him. "This can't be happening," he muttered, running his fingers through his dark hair. "I was following the briefing materials exactly." Ambassador Rivera pulled up the holographic protocol guide, her face grim as she scrolled through the document. The cultural attaché who prepared this confused the greeting ceremony with the royal courtship ritual. The crystal you presented, that specific azure shade, symbolizes eternal devotion in Solari culture. "And kneeling while presenting it?" Marcus asked, already knowing the answer. Completes the proposal gesture. Rivera sighed heavily. In their culture, it's an unbreakable commitment once accepted. Dr. Eliza Chen, the team's biologist, looked up from her data pad. The biological incompatibility alone should invalidate this. Our DNA structures aren't even remotely similar. The door chimed with a crystalline resonance before sliding open. Princess Kelnara entered, her crystalline form shifting through subtle blue and violet hues that Marcus now realized indicated amusement. "The human who captured my sister's crown," she said, her translated voice melodic despite the teasing tone. "Your delegation seems distressed." Ambassador Rivera stepped forward. "Your Highness, there's been a misunderstanding of cultural protocols." "There is no misunderstanding," Kelnara interrupted, her form pulsing with more serious amber tones. "My sister understood perfectly that Dr. Chen was likely unaware of the ritual's significance. She accepted anyway." Marcus found his voice. But why would she accept a proposal from someone she just met? Someone not even of her species. Kelnara's crystalline features arranged themselves in what Marcus recognized as the Solari equivalent of a contemplative expression. "Walk with me, Dr. Chen," she said, gesturing toward a private balcony overlooking the crystal gardens below. Once alone, Kelnara's color softened. "My sister has ruled for 3 decades without a consort. The crystal purity faction grows stronger each cycle, demanding she mate with their chosen candidate to produce an heir of untainted resonance. I still don't understand why she would accept me," Marcus said. "The ancient texts speak of strengthening our species through new resonance patterns," Kelnara explained. "Our scientists have concluded that our crystalline genome has become too uniform, creating vulnerabilities. The royal bloodline especially." Marcus leaned against the balcony rail. "So I'm a genetic diversity solution." "Initially, perhaps." Kelnara's form shimmered with what might have been hesitation. "But I'd never seen my sister's resonance pattern respond to anyone as it did to you. There's something unique in your neural patterns that creates harmonic possibilities our scientists thought impossible." Below them, Solari citizens gathered in the plaza, their crystalline forms glittering with celebration lights. News of the engagement had spread rapidly. "What happens if I refuse?" Marcus asked quietly. "The treaty negotiations would collapse immediately. The Crystal Purity faction would claim humans are dishonorable and untrustworthy." Kelnara's colors darkened. "But worse, my sister would lose standing at a critical moment when our civilization faces external threats we cannot confront alone." A soft chime announced another visitor. They turned to see Queen Zara Vex herself at the threshold, her majestic form radiating a gentle phosphorescence. "I believe proper human protocol suggests we should have a private conversation, Dr. Chen," the Queen said, her translated voice surprisingly warm. "Perhaps about the unexpected future that now lies before us both." Marcus stared at the holographic display of Solari marriage customs, his eyes burning from hours of study. Princess Kelnara lounged across from him, her crystalline form reclined in a position that somehow conveyed both royal dignity and casual amusement. The resonance ceremony requires you to produce 7 distinct harmonic tones, she explained, generating a shimmering sound wave from her crystalline structure. Most Solori spend years perfecting their resonance for their eventual pairing. Marcus attempted to replicate the first tone, his human vocal cords producing a sound that made Kelnara's form briefly flash with colours he now recognized as suppressed laughter. That was, she paused diplomatically, an interesting interpretation. I'm never going to master this in 3 days, Marcus sighed, resting his forehead against the cool crystal table. Perhaps we approach this incorrectly, Kelnara suggested, her colours shifting to thoughtful blue hues. Humans cannot produce crystal resonance naturally, but you create music with instruments, yes. Marcus straightened. That's actually brilliant. Could I use something like a tuning fork or synthesizer to produce the correct frequencies? Unprecedented, but not explicitly forbidden, Kelnara said, her form brightening. My sister appreciates creative solutions. A soft chime interrupted them as Ambassador Rivera entered, her expression tight with tension. The Earth Security Council just concluded their emergency session, she reported. They're divided on whether to support this union or extract you from the situation. Marcus frowned. Extract me. That would destroy any chance of alliance. Some believe the Solori orchestrated this as a trap to gain leverage over Earth, Rivera explained. Others see unprecedented diplomatic opportunity. It was no trap, Kelnara interjected, her colours flaring defensively. My sister could have rejected the unintentional proposal without incident. Rivera's expression remained sceptical. Then why accept it so readily? Before Kelnara could respond, the chamber door dissolved into light particles, revealing Queen Zaravex. Everyone immediately bowed, including Marcus, who was still learning the proper depth of inclination for different situations. Ambassador, I understand your government's concerns, the Queen said, her resonant voice filling the room. Perhaps you would permit me a moment alone with my intended. After Rivera and Kelnara departed, an unexpected awkwardness filled the space between human and Solori Queen. Your sister was helping me with the resonance tones, Marcus explained, gesturing to the holographic diagrams. Kelnara means well, but she forgets that different species have different strengths, Zaravex said, approaching the table. I've been researching human customs too. Your marriage ceremonies often involve spoken vows, personal promises exchanged between partners. Marcus nodded, surprised by her knowledge. They're usually personalized statements of commitment. This concept fascinates me, she said, her crystalline features reconfiguring into what Marcus was beginning to recognize as her contemplative expression. Solori unions are strategic arrangements with prescribed ritual phrases. The idea of unique, personally crafted promises is appealing. Marcus studied her, noticing subtle colour patterns he hadn't seen before. You really have been researching human culture. Of course, if I am to have a human consort, should I not understand his species? She moved closer, her crystalline form catching the light in hypnotic patterns. Tell me, Dr. Chen, in human marriages, does affection typically precede the union, or develop afterward? The unexpectedly personal question caught him off guard. It varies. Traditionally, affection comes first, but there have always been arranged marriages where feelings develop later. Fascinating, she said. And which would you prefer? Before Marcus could answer, emergency alarms resonated throughout the Crystal Palace. The Queen's form instantly shifted to alert colors as a security officer materialized at the doorway. "Your Majesty, crystal purity protesters have breached the outer gardens. They're demanding the human delegation be expelled from Nexora immediately." The second trial loomed before Marcus in the form of a vast crystalline chamber filled with floating geometric puzzles that rotated in three-dimensional space. Elder Vex Mor, the ancient Silori priest overseeing the trials, hovered nearby, his aged crystalline form dulled with millennia of existence. The symmetry challenge tests a consort's ability to perceive multidimensional patterns, the Elder explained. You must identify which formations would maintain perfect resonance when merged. Marcus surveyed the floating crystal formations with growing concern. To Silori perception, these patterns contained harmonic properties invisible to human senses. Hundreds of spectators watched from ascending crystal platforms, their forms shimmering with anticipation. Among them, Marcus spotted Ambassador Rivera and his human colleagues looking tense. "You may begin," Elder Vex Mor announced, his tone suggesting he expected swift failure. Marcus approached the first formation, a complex dodecahedron rotating slowly on multiple axes. Recalling his university physics courses, he closed his eyes and mentally mapped the structure's potential energy states. Without Silori's sensory abilities, he needed a different approach. "May I?" he asked, reaching for a small tool on his belt. The Elder nodded skeptically. Marcus extracted his pocket laser pointer, a simple device he brought to highlight details during diplomatic presentations. He projected the narrow beam through various facets of the crystal, observing how the light refracted and scattered. The audience murmured as he worked methodically, moving from one formation to the next. Formations 3 and 17 are harmonically compatible, Marcus finally announced, as are 5 and 22. A surprised hush fell over the chamber. Elder Vex Mor's form flickered with disbelief as he verified the answers. "Correct," he admitted reluctantly, "through unconventional means." From her observation platform, Queen Zaravex leaned forward, her crystalline structure emanating what Marcus now recognized as intrigued purple hues. Beside her, several Silori scientists were recording his methods with evident fascination. The third trial proved even more challenging, a resonance chamber where Marcus needed to navigate through harmonic barriers audible only to Silori physiology. Remembering his conversation with Kelnara, Marcus removed a small synthesizer device from his pocket, a tool he prepared after their discussion about producing harmonic tones. "This is unprecedented," Elder Vex Mor protested. "The trials must be completed using inherent abilities, not external technology." "Respectfully, Elder," Marcus countered, "the ancient texts specify the consort's natural faculties. Technology is humanity's natural faculty. Our evolutionary advantage is creating tools to extend our capabilities." A ripple of discussion spread through the audience. Marcus caught Queen Zaravex making a subtle gesture to the Elder, who reluctantly nodded his permission. Using the synthesizer, Marcus generated counter-frequencies that revealed the harmonic barriers. As he navigated the invisible maze, he noticed something unexpected. Certain frequencies produced resonance patterns that seemed to connect directly with the Queen's crystalline structure, causing her form to shimmer in response. Their unexpected harmonic connection didn't go unnoticed. When Marcus successfully completed the trial, whispers spread through the chamber about the prophecy of shared resonance. The final trial brought Marcus to the edge precipice, a narrow crystal bridge extending over a bottomless chasm. As he stepped onto the translucent surface, it began to dissolve beneath his feet, requiring precise placement and timing. Halfway across, The dissolution accelerated beyond human reflexes. Marcus stumbled as a section vanished beneath him. He pitched forward toward the abyss, arms flailing for purchase that wasn't there. A collective gasp echoed through the chamber as the Queen suddenly moved, her form extending across the space between them faster than seemed possible. Her crystalline appendage caught Marcus's outstretched hand. The moment their forms connected, a brilliant resonance pattern erupted around them, bathing the chamber in harmonics that caused every Salori present to vibrate in astonished response. The Royal Strategic Chamber hummed with activity as Marcus studied the positions of the various diplomatic vessels now orbiting Nexura. The Arthropoid Collective had sent 3 high ships, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that Marcus suspected contained messages visible only to compound eyes. The Nebula Consciousness representative floated in a containment field nearby, its gaseous form shifting through spectrums beyond human visual range. The Murska delegation requests private audience before tomorrow's ceremony, reported Televex, the Queen's chief diplomatic advisor. They claim ancestral trading rights with Earth should give them precedence in the new alliance. Marcus shook his head. The Rurska approached Earth only after our initial contact with Nexura. They're opportunists. Agreed, Televex said, her crystalline form flickering with what Marcus now recognized as approval. You're learning interstellar politics quickly. The chamber door dissolved as Ambassador Rivera entered, her expression troubled. Marcus, we need to talk. Privately. They moved to a small adjoining alcove where Rivera activated a human privacy field. Earth Central Command is questioning your loyalty, she said bluntly. This morning's broadcast from the North American Union suggested you've been compromised by Salori-influenced technology. Marcus's jaw tightened. That's absurd. Is it? Rivera challenged. 3 weeks ago, you were Earth's leading xenolinguist. Now you're about to become royal consort to an alien queen after mysteriously excelling at trials designed for silicon-based life forms. There was nothing mysterious about it, Marcus countered. I used human problem-solving approaches, including the resonance phenomenon when the Queen touched you. Rivera raised an eyebrow. Our scientists can't explain that. Before Marcus could respond, alarms resonated throughout the chamber. The privacy field dissolved as Salori guards rushed in, surrounding the Queen who had just entered. Vex Tari scout ships detected at the edge of the system. Zaravex announced, her form pulsing with urgent colours. They're testing our defensive perimeter. The timing isn't coincidental, Marcus said, immediately focusing on the tactical display. They're responding to the alliance forming here. Zaravex moved beside him, studying the formation patterns. They believe our species are too different to coordinate effectively. Then let's prove them wrong, Marcus suggested, pointing to the display. The Vextari rely on predictive algorithms. If we could coordinate Salori crystal tech with unpredictable human attack vectors, we could create defensive patterns their systems cannot anticipate, the Queen finished his thought. Their eyes met in shared understanding that transcended their biological differences. Ambassador Rivera watched this exchange with growing concern. Marcus, we need authorization from Earth Command before committing to any joint military action. There's no time, he replied, not looking away from the Queen. The Vextari are probing for weaknesses before the wedding solidifies our alliance. You speak as though you're already more Nexran than human, Rivera said quietly. The accusation hung in the air. Marcus finally turned to face her. I'm trying to protect both our worlds. The tension was broken by the arrival of Princess Kelnara, her form vibrating with urgent patterns. "The Crystal Purity faction is broadcasting transmissions to the Vex Tari," she reported. "They're offering to sabotage our defenses if the Vex Tari help prevent the human alliance." Queen Zaravex's form darkened with anger. "Treason." "It's worse than that," Marcus said grimly. "They're compromising both our species." He accessed the tactical display, highlighting vulnerabilities in Earth's defense grid. "If the Vex Tari learn our weaknesses from Solori insiders, they could strike Earth directly while we're distracted here." The Queen's crystalline hand reached toward his, hesitating just short of contact. "What would you advise, Marcus?" All eyes in the chamber turned to him, human and alien alike, awaiting his response. Marcus adjusted the frequency on his newly designed resonance amplifier, a device he created with help from both human engineers and Solori crystal shapers. The small handheld instrument represented the first true technological collaboration between their species. Queen Zaravex sat across from him in her private meditation chamber, her crystalline form arranged in a reception configuration. "Try the third harmonic sequence again," she suggested, her voice gentle in the quiet space. Marcus activated the device, which translated his neural patterns into crystal-compatible resonance frequencies. The sound rippled through the chamber, creating patterns of light and vibration that connected with the Queen's structure. Her form shimmered in response, edges glowing with a warm amber hue that Marcus had learned signified contentment. "You've achieved in days what most Solori require years to master," she said, her translated voice carrying notes of wonder. "The harmonic bridge you've established shouldn't be possible between carbon and silicon-based life." "Yet here we are," Marcus replied with a small smile. He deactivated the device. "Though I'm still relying on technology rather than natural ability." "Technology is humanity's natural ability," Zaravex echoed his earlier argument. "Your species evolved to extend yourselves through tools. It's what makes humans unique and valuable." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Archivarian Vextilar, the ancient keeper of Solori historical records. The elderly crystalline being moved slowly, his once vibrant form now muted with age. "Your Majesty," he acknowledged the Queen with a formal resonance pattern before turning to Marcus. "Human, I have completed the analysis you requested of the prophetic texts." Marcus leaned forward, and "The passage concerning the foreign consort with resonance beyond crystal appears in writings dating back to the first crystalline age, approximately 12,000 Earth years ago." The Archivarian's form shifted to project holographic images of ancient crystalline text. "The prophecy speaks of a time when the Queen of Queens will join with one knot of crystal birth, creating harmonies that bridge worlds and transform the song of our species forever." Zaravex's form stilled completely, a Solori expression of profound surprise. "I was unaware of such specific prophecies." "They were sealed in the deep archives," Vextilar admitted. "The Crystal Purity faction has suppressed these texts for generations. But there is more." His form projected additional symbols. "The prophecy warns of the dissonant ones who will return from the void when the bridge between worlds begins to form." "The Vex Tari," Marcus whispered. "Perhaps," the Archivarian conceded. "The ancient texts describe how the resonance between the Queen and the foreign consort creates a harmonic shield against the great dissonance. Most curious is this passage." He highlighted a complex crystalline formula. "This appears to be a mathematical prediction of a resonance pattern created by two fundamentally different biological systems achieving harmonic synchronization." Marcus studied the formula. "This resembles the pattern that appeared when the Queen and I touched during the trials." The Archivarian's form flickered with reluctant acknowledgement. "Yes, The matches, precise. After the Archivarian departed, silence filled the chamber. Marcus turned to find the Queen's form pulsing with rapid colour shifts he'd never seen before. "Are you all right?" he asked with concern. "I've ruled for 3 decades, believing I was making strategic choices based on logical necessity," she said quietly. "To discover our meeting might have been predicted millennia ago is unsettling." Marcus moved closer, his resonance amplifier creating gentle harmonies between them. "Does it change anything? How you feel about this arrangement?" Her crystalline features reconfigured into what he now recognized as her most unguarded expression. "Yes," she admitted, "but perhaps not in the way you might think." She extended a crystalline appendage toward him, stopping just short of contact. "Among my people, voluntary resonance sharing is an act of profound trust. May I show you something no human has ever experienced?" Marcus hesitated only briefly before setting aside his amplifier and reaching for her extended form. "Yes." Their contact created an immediate cascade of harmonic patterns that filled the chamber with light. But this time, Marcus felt something new, a presence in his mind, gentle but unmistakable. "Marcus," her voice resonated directly in his thoughts. "Can you hear me?" The grand resonance chamber transformed instantly from wedding venue to war room. The elaborate crystalline arches that had been grown specifically for the ceremony now displayed tactical holograms, showing Vex Tari fleet movements. Marcus stood beside Queen Zara Vex, both still in their ceremonial attire, as military commanders from both species crowded around them. The Vex Tari have deployed 27 battle clusters, reported Commander Sheng of Earth's defense fleet. They're positioning for simultaneous strikes against both Nexora and Earth's lunar colonies. A classic division strategy added high resonator Kivtex, the Salori military leader. They expect us to split our forces to defend our respective homeworlds. Diplomatic representatives from the 12 witnessing species hovered uncertainly at the chamber's perimeter. The Arthropoid Collective's ambassador chittered nervously. The collective withdraws its witness status and declares neutrality in this conflict. One by one, most of the diplomatic contingents followed suit, unwilling to be drawn into the brewing war. Only the Nebula Consciousness representative remained, its gaseous form swirling with patterns that suggested calculation. "We will observe," it stated simply. Marcus turned to the Queen, their newly formed telepathic connection humming between them. "They're isolating us," he thought to her. "As the Vex Tari intended," she responded silently. Aloud, she addressed the commanders. "Our separate defences cannot withstand their coordinated attack. We must implement integrated strategies immediately." Kivtex's crystalline form darkened with skepticism. "Majesty, our defense systems are incompatible with human technology. Integration would require months off." "We don't have months," Marcus interrupted. "But we might not need them." He stepped to the central tactical display. "The resonance technology that allows the Queen and I to communicate could be adapted to synchronize our defense grids." Ambassador Rivera looked alarmed. "That technology was developed for your personal use, not military application. It hasn't been approved by Earth Command." "Earth will have no command left if the Vex Tari succeed," Marcus countered. He turned to the Queen. "The harmonic patterns we've established could serve as a translation protocol between our systems." Zaravex's form brightened with understanding. "Creating a hybrid defense network operating on frequencies the Vex Tari cannot anticipate or counter." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Commander Sheng was the first to nod. It could work. The Vex Tari rely on predictive algorithms. A defense system based on the harmonic resonance between two different species would be impossible for them to model. We would need to deploy resonance amplifiers to both fleets, Kivtex noted, warming to the idea, and establish direct neural links between command ships. Which would require, Rivera began. Used to be separated, Marcus finished, looking at the Queen. The unfinished bonding ritual between them still resonated, creating a tenuous connection that allowed their limited telepathy. I would need to coordinate from the Earth flagship while you remain on Nexera. For a moment, private emotion flickered across the Queen's crystalline features, visible only to Marcus through their bond. We've barely begun to explore what exists between us. Her thoughts reached him. All the more reason to ensure we survive to continue, he replied silently. Aloud, the Queen addressed the chamber. Prepare 2 command centers. Transfer the resonance amplifier schematics to both fleets for immediate production. She turned to Marcus, her form shifting to formal configurations despite the personal turmoil he could sense beneath. Dr. Chen will coordinate the Earth Defense Forces while I direct the Solori fleet. As the chamber erupted into activity, Marcus and Zaravex shared a final moment together. Complete our vows when we return, she said, extending her crystalline form toward him. Marcus reached out, their connection creating brilliant harmonic patterns that rippled throughout the chamber. When we return, he promised. Not if. The Nebula Consciousness Observer pulsed with what might have been approval or surprise. Fascinating, it noted to no one in particular. The prophecy begins to fulfill itself. The command deck of the Earth flagship Resilience hummed with tense activity as Marcus monitored the deployment of the newly created resonance amplifiers throughout the human fleet. Commander Sheng stood beside him, her expression shifting between hope and skepticism. 37% of our ships now have functioning amplifiers, reported Lieutenant Okafor from the communications station. The Solori fleet reports similar progress. Marcus nodded, his attention divided between the tactical displays and the faint telepathic connection he still maintained with Queen Zaravex across vast distances. Their bond had weakened with separation, but remained functional enough to coordinate the unprecedented defense strategy. The Vextari have adapted to our standard evasion patterns, came the Queen's distant thought. Their algorithmic predictions are compensating faster than expected. Marcus turned to Commander Sheng. We need to introduce genuine randomness into our attack vectors, something truly unpredictable. Our tactical systems are designed for optimal efficiency, Sheng countered. Randomness reduces effectiveness. That's exactly what the Vextari are counting on, Marcus insisted. He accessed the ship's communication system. I need to broadcast to all vessels equipped with resonance amplifiers. Moments later, Marcus addressed the combined human fleet. This is Dr. Marcus Chen. We're facing an enemy that predicts our moves because we rely on logical optimization, just as they do. We need to introduce elements they cannot anticipate because they defy conventional logic. He paused, an unexpected inspiration forming. I'm transmitting new tactical protocols. Squadron leaders Baker through Echo, your attack patterns will now follow the improvisational structure of jazz music. Confused responses flooded the communication channels until Marcus clarified. Jazz is built on structured improvisation, patterns that follow feeling rather than pure calculation. I'm sending tempo and key signatures. Your trajectories should follow these frameworks while allowing individual ships to improvise within the structure. Commander Sheng looked at him as though he'd lost his mind. You want our fleet to dance? Essentially, yes, Marcus confirmed, but with purpose and coordination through the resonance network. Through their bond, He felt the Queen's amused appreciation of his approach. Brilliant, her thought reached him. The Vex-Tari consciousness cannot process artistic improvisation. As the human fleet began implementing the unusual strategy, Marcus watched with satisfaction as Vex-Tari targeting systems faltered, unable to predict the seemingly random yet subtly coordinated movements of Earth ships. "We're implementing complementary patterns based on Solari crystal harmonics," the Queen informed him. "Our ships will create resonance fields that amplify your fleet's movements." On tactical displays, the human ships moved in flowing, unpredictable patterns, while Solari vessels generated expanding fields of crystalline energy that strengthened their allies' shields and weapons. The Vex-Tari command ships are repositioning. Lieutenant Okafor reported with growing excitement. They're falling back to regroup. The moment of advantage was brief but critical. Marcus sensed the Queen's strategy forming through their bond and immediately understood. "All ships with resonance amplifiers," he ordered, "converge on these coordinates." He transmitted the position where the Queen was directing her fleet. "Prepare to channel all energy through the resonance network on my mark." Commander Sheng looked alarmed. "That's not a standard combat formation. What are you planning?" Something the Vex-Tari couldn't possibly predict, Marcus replied, his mind synchronized with the Queen's across space. "We're going to create a harmonic convergence between our fleets, something that's never been attempted." As both human and Solari vessels moved into position, Marcus closed his eyes, focusing on strengthening his connection with Zaravex. Through their bond, he sensed her doing the same. Together, her thought came to him, stronger now as their fleets drew closer. "Now," Marcus commanded as their connection peaked. Energy surged through the resonance network, human and Solari technologies harmonizing in ways neither species had imagined possible. A massive wave of crystalline energy rippled outward, enveloping the Vex-Tari command ships in disruptive harmonics that crashed through their defense systems. Marcus and Queen Zaravex stood side by side on the observation deck of the newly completed Harmony Spire, the tallest structure on New Nexura. Below them stretched the sprawling capital that had been rebuilt following the Vex-Tari conflict, its architecture a seamless blend of human and Solari design principles. Crystal towers caught the light of the setting sun, while more traditional Earth-inspired buildings provided spaces comfortable for the growing human population. Chancellor Tevex seems nervous about tomorrow's council session, Marcus observed, watching a group of young delegates rehearsing protocols in the plaza below. Zaravex's crystalline form shimmered with what Marcus now recognized as amusement. After 2 decades together, reading her emotional patterns had become second nature. He fears the Arthropoid Collective will demand additional concessions on the Outer Rim mining rights. "They won't," Marcus replied confidently. "Their Queen Mother sent private assurances this morning. They're posturing for their worker caste." The Queen's form shifted closer to Giz, their proximity creating the familiar harmonic resonance that had only strengthened over the years. Though his hair had greyed and lines had formed around his eyes, the bond between them remained vibrant. Solari scientists had been astonished to discover that prolonged resonance connection had slightly altered both their biologies. Her crystalline structure now contained trace carbon elements, while his cellular structure showed unexpected silicon integration. "There was a time I believed ruling Nexura alone was my destiny," Zaravex reflected. "Now I cannot imagine governing without your perspective to balance mine." Marcus smiled. Logic and improvisation, structure and adaptability. It turns out we needed both. Their contemplation was interrupted by the arrival of Kelnara, who had become the primary administrator of the Nexus Initiative. "The Harmony children request your presence at their graduation ceremony," she announced, her tone carrying the affectionate exasperation she always displayed toward the program's participants. The Nexus Initiative had begun as a small orphanage housing children from both species who had lost parents in the war. It had evolved into the most prestigious educational program in the Alliance, producing diplomats and scientists uniquely qualified to bridge different biological perspectives. "How many graduates this year?" Marcus asked. 43, Kelnara replied, including representatives from the Nebula Consciousness and the Arthropoid Collective who requested inclusion. The program has expanded beyond our original vision. Like so many aspects of their accidental union, Marcus thought. What had begun as a diplomatic blunder had catalyzed changes neither species could have predicted. A soft alert chimed, indicating the arrival of the Vextari observation delegation. Following their defeat, the once aggressive species had requested permission to study the harmonic principles that had overcome their technological advantages. Under strict protocols, they were now students rather than enemies. They're still struggling to understand how improvisation and resonance could defeat their predictive algorithms, Zaravex noted. Some concepts can't be understood through pure logic, Marcus replied. They need to experience them. As they prepared to depart for the graduation ceremony, Marcus's hand brushed against the Queen's crystalline form, creating cascades of harmonic patterns that rippled through the air between them. After 20 years, the simple contact still generated wonder in those who witnessed it. From the window, they could see the first representatives arriving for tomorrow's Galactic Council, 26 species gathering to formalize the interstellar cooperative that had grown from the Human-Siluri Alliance. The newly constructed council chamber incorporated acoustic principles that would allow all species to communicate clearly despite their different sensory modalities. The Archivarians found additional prophecies. Zaravex mentioned casually. They speak of the resonance bridge expanding to encompass all sentient patterns. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Are you suggesting our accidental marriage was the first step toward a galactic unification predicted thousands of years ago? The Queen's form shimmered with the equivalent of a smile. I'm suggesting that the most significant moments in history often begin with mistakes. In that case, Marcus replied with a grin, I've never been more grateful for a linguistic error in my life.